So in this talk, I'm going to talk about characters that talk in games. Video game characters have always talked. Well, I mean, we've made Spectrum games. Me and my brother, I always say we because I'm a twin, and we made games together as early as the Spectrum, and even our Spectrum games spoke. So we've made a lot of games, and they all speak. But they don't speak back, do they? You know? And that's kind of weird. It's like you'll play Red Dead Redemption and you'll answer them by clicking buttons, even though they're beautifully acted. And this is crazy because the world knows that you can talk to people, but you can even talk to your phones and things, as we all do. I think pretty much everyone here has talked to their phone and gone, no, bloody hell, it told me the weather when I asked it. Yeah, wouldn't it be cool if you just talked to your game characters like that? That's what we thought. A little bit of background of the kind of influences I've got from my point of view of what I think of interactive fiction is and the kind of games I played as opposed to the kind of games I wrote. So when I was probably 13 or 14, I'd never really liked English. I didn't read books and stuff. My literature's absolutely rubbish. But there were people buying these adventure books, and it was like, oh, actually, that's quite interesting, because it's like you read a couple of paragraphs, and then you can make a choice, and you feel more involved, and you feel like you don't know where it's going. It's not just a completely linear path, like what we have with films and stuff, which are pretty linear. And there was just this idea that choice mattered, and I thought that was really cool. A friend of ours, his dad had an Apple IIe, and we'd play games like Zork, like these sort of dungeon crawlers, go north, go west and stuff, and he was like, oh, that's quite interesting, and we used to play that together, and it really got the imagination going. There weren't any real pictures, but you used your imagination to sort of imagine this huge dark spider that's in the next cave. And then we had early graphics. There's lots of games, not particularly Lords of Midnight, although that's one of them, where it would try to procedurally give you some crude graphics that are made up from bits and pieces. There were quite a few of those games, and we played those. And then a mind-blowing moment came out, and we'd started writing games by this point. We were inspired by Pac-Man and Space Invaders to get into video games, and we used our BBC Micro and things to try and see if we could write those sort of games. But then it was just awe-inspiring when we saw Dragon's Lair. Hopefully all of you know about Dragon's Lair. I mean, that was a pivotal moment, and it was like, oh my God, it looks like a real cartoon, but you interact with it. How cool is that? The coolness of the Laserdisc. I think when we wrote Ghostbusters 2, we had a journalist sort of say to us, oh, little kids, because we were 20 or something when we wrote that game, and he was like a 50, 60-year-old journalist, wrote up some article, and he said, yeah, it's a nice little fad, this whole Spectrum thing, but you probably need to get a real job someday. And we were like, ah! And he said it at the end of the interview, and we're going, sorry, we just talked all about how we've turned a film into a game, and yeah, we know the graphics are crude, but the graphics are getting better all the time. But it's the fact that you were involved and immersed, and we said, look, give it a few years, and the graphics will be so good that you'll be playing as James Bond, and it will look like the film. And he just laughed at us and walked away. And we kind of I wonder if he'll write that in the article. And he never did, and I wish he almost did, because it would have made him look the fool, because he just laughed and said, that's never going to happen. He couldn't see past crap graphics and frankly, poor writing. But it was clearly going to advance. Monkey Island, I was just a massive fan of Monkey Island. I just thought it was just genius. It was so comedic, which lacks in all other video games. You don't get comedy, and it's like in other entertainment fields, comedy's really good. And his was something that was just a joy to play through and solve the puzzles. Fable, obviously, an extremely successful series that took this storytelling to the next level, and looking forward to the next one, which has been in development for a little while now. Telltale Games did an amazing thing where they created an absolutely wonderful engine, got very clever, talented people, and bought a whole load of really good IPs to make stuff. Unfortunately, I was like, that is just genius. That is amazing, because you're making proper interactive films now. You've got this engine and pipeline, and you're just whacking through them, and then they all just I don't know what happened, but it all just fell apart, which I was like, oh, that's a bit of a shame, just when it looked like they really had something. And recently, obviously, we've seen like these teenage romance things become massive, but they're really shallow at the same time. Sorry if some of you play that, but it's probably the younger ones that play it, even though it's probably not totally suitable, some of the subject matter. Anyway, that's sort of my thoughts on interactive fiction. Come on, why is it not clicking through you? So, yeah, I'm not going to read all the bullet points. I'm going to go a bit quicker because we'll be here for ages. But some of my things about sort of me and my brother developing lots of games. We have developed an awful lot of games over the years. And probably one of the things, particularly in this sort of audience, well, if it was an older audience maybe, might remember that me and my brother wrote an awful lot of Dizzy games. But one of the points of the Dizzy games, they were just small story adventure games written on Spectrums and Commodore 64s and things. But we made a tool set and an engine that we could make stories in, and we made little characters, but we made it so that you were making the game and the story whilst playing it. Most people would make separate editors and then have a game, and they'd be jumping between them. We could actually play our game and keep like pressing the escape button and just putting things in and carry on playing. And that made it really quick and slick, but you were actually playing it, adapting it all the time. And it felt like you were sort of playing the game, which is actually what Minecraft does nowadays, frankly. People are sort of playing the game while we're building the game, and that's part of the joy of it. So iteration is like make it really nice and easy, and you'll end up with stuff. The other thing is make it really easy. It's like, people used to joke about the number of games we wrote. We tried to write a game in a month. Like every game that we wrote, typically they came out in about 6 weeks. But you're enthusiastic if you can write a game quite quickly, and you can remember it in your head. I remember playing Monkey Island, and if you take too long playing it, you start to forget what the puzzles were. You want to be able to write something whilst you're still excited about it. And if any of you have written games and stuff, if it goes into months and months, you kind of lose the passion and lose the enthusiasm, and you just want to see the back of it. So make nice tools, make it fun to iterate, and make it really quick and really easy. My lesson there. So I'm here to talk about what we're making now. It's a new platform for making interactive fiction. One of the USPs, apart from making it extremely easy with no coding and stuff, is the fact that you talk to characters that talk back to you. And it's going to feel like a bit salesy, partly because I used some slides from another thing, which was a bit of a sales pitch. But I'm not selling anything. Everything is completely free, and you can just go and download it and play with it yourself. So, in fact, it's the other way around. If people are good at it, we pay them. So, because we're looking for some good interactive fiction. So it's a case of we want people to. It's a new type of entertainment where the entertainment is conversation. So, and if you think about storytelling over the years, I could do one of these sort of academic weeks where they go, oh yes, stories were originally told over a campfire by cavemen or whatever. And it's like, and it would have been sort of made up and sort of working with the group, and they would have been talking about things and discussing things. Whereas a Hollywood action movie now is like, there it is, it's bloody good production values, just watch it as is, it's fixed. And it's like, no, it's nice if it's conversational. It involves everyone, and it can involve the player now. A little tiny commercial so that you get a little flavor.
Introducing RichCast, Next Generation Media, a new universal format for interactive streamed entertainment. A convenient, easy-to-use library, player, and editor opens up a whole new world of possibilities. Everyone loves entertainment and information on their mobile phones. It's even better, more personal and engaging when that entertainment is interactive. But developing interactive media is currently difficult and expensive. RichCast is the answer. As one of the most exciting new creative apps, RichCast has a whole host of features like voice recognition.
Where should we go, Holmes?
Let's go to the bedroom.
Artificial intelligence characters, and the ability to import your own art, video, and audio, or choose from the inbuilt media library. Download today and you can create, share, and publish interactive titles through the built-in fast and easy-to-use no-code editor. RichCast is unique and groundbreaking. RichCast is next generation media.
There we go, right. Okay, so I'm going to go through some sort of lessons that we learned while making some of this stuff. Some of it is very much to do with voice, and some of it is just good rules for interactive fiction. Partly because I do play a lot of interactive fiction, and it dismays me at what I feel is mistakes. So maybe some people will think I'm not qualified to do that. I have written a lot of games, and I always try to think of the mass market. I always try to think, what is it? We learned a lot of lessons when making those Dizzy games in the fact that it was always make a game, fire and forget. You'd have 34K of memory to come up with a game that was based on about 80 locations, 80 screens, 10 characters, and we tried to aim for about 30 puzzles with dialogue. And if you try and work out how that fits in 34K, so I'd like to think that we were sort of masters of code at that time, because it was all about how you squeeze all these things in. We tried to make the puzzles attainable to everyone and make some sort of logic, but having a key to a door is just boring, frankly. It was always in there. That puzzle was always like the first puzzle. Pick up the key and open the door. But you want to put story behind it and make them more. Unfortunately, we found very quickly that you make puzzles that people just don't get. And I'd like to think that we were writing stories where people would always get to the end, and there was just a lot of puzzles they had to solve, and the penny would drop on certain puzzles, and it didn't always drop. And people said, I just got stuck. It's like I couldn't work out how to grow a magical beanstalk to get to the cloud castle, and it was like, you should have found the magic bean. I thought that was obvious, but unless you know Jack and the Beanstalk, you might not have got it. Anyway, so we've learned lessons over the time. I'm going to go through some of our lessons, but some of them are voices, some of them are just everything else. Conversation. It's a cool way of interacting with story characters, but it's very difficult to write, and all of our games that we've made for Disney and DreamWorks and various other companies have always had voiced characters, which becomes very expensive, but you have to develop the whole thing without getting those voices. They always go in at the end when the game's finished, because that's how it works. But if you just put text in, or speech bubbles where all the text is, it's not the same. It doesn't give the same experience. So we used to play around with sort of artificial voices in the early days to try and get a feel for how it should be written, because it's going to be voiced. It lacks empathy and lacks drama and everything like that. But you need those placeholders. But artificial voices are very good now. In a story, it's like you've got to jump in fairly quickly and make sure that people understand what they're doing. And it's amazing how, looking at all these games, when I sit down, it's like, so we started off with Sherlock Holmes because people say, so what, the whole gameplay is conversation. How is that gonna work? And you go, right, okay, let's think of a game. If I'd have come up with some like random new thing, people wouldn't have got it. If I go, you are Sherlock Holmes, guess what you're going to do? You're going to talk to people to work out who committed the murder. You know, it's kind of obvious. So our kind of first prototype was to do something obvious before we go like too much further. We wanted to make sure, we actually did commission one of the writers who has written games dialogue for us, that the entire thing would be a fully playable game by just a single writer, just an author. It's like, that's very important. No technical knowledge. Because a lot of games, ours included in the early days, were written by programmers who frankly are pretty rubbish when it comes to literature and writing. Luckily, we had an excuse. We were making very small games. But your writers should not need to be technical. They need to just know writing. And obviously, Sherlock Holmes was just a start, and we've learned a ton of lessons along the way. So I'll give you a little demo of what was written.
I remember it was bitterly cold that morning in 1896, and icy fog blanketed the city, while freezing rain swiftly soaked the clothes.
We obviously
of any of
added
those who
graphics
were hardy
afterwards.
enough to venture out. I burst into the cozy sitting room of 221B Baker Street to find Mr. Sherlock Holmes. Holmes, Sir William Blanchard has died, and it looks like a murder.
Oh no, who's that?
He was one of the Empire's greatest adventurers, traveling the world, discovering lost empires, and finding priceless artifacts. Shall we attend right away?
Absolutely, yes, let's go.
We were soon in a growler, the horses pulling us swiftly through the London bustle towards Sir William Blanchard's abode. Sir William Blanchard's house was as impressive as the man himself.
Dr. Watson, Mr. Holmes, thank you for coming over. It's a very perplexing case. The victim is still in his bedroom, so you might want to start there. The valet is in the drawing room, awaiting your questioning.
Where should we go, Holmes?
Let's go up to the bedroom and see the body.
A sorry sight isn't a gentleman.
Where would you like to start?
Let's start by looking at the body.
Sir William's face is a terrible mask of agony. His clothing is in disarray. His hands appear clenched and tight. What shall we take a closer look at?
Can we have a look at his hands?
Let me see if I can open them. His palms are covered in a red rash, as if he had pressed them to something hot.
Right, we get the idea. So interestingly enough, I said we added the graphics afterwards. When we first started into this, we were thinking that we could be making interactive podcasts. It actually asks, will you be looking at the screen? And if you say no, the screen, because it's your mobile phone, actually does display the images, but it gives you descriptions of each of the rooms. So effectively, you could play it as just a podcast and be just talking. So put your headphones in, go for a walk, and you could play it because it will give you descriptions. So, and it was partly because the author, when he was writing it, did all the descriptions so the artist could go and draw the rooms. And we were like, oh, we got all the descriptions, and they're quite nice. They're very descriptive. And yeah, maybe people want to play it like that. So you could actually play it as a sort of interactive podcast if you wanted. And we thought that was quite interesting, but because obviously you can have choice, the first choice is, do you want to do it as an interactive podcast? So, general stories. Think about when you're making a story, who is your audience, and who would like to play it. And I could give you all sorts of funny things. Right, we did the game Barbie Horse Riding, and people used to slag it off in reviews. And there was one pinnacle one who it completely slagged off Barbie Horse Riding all the way through, and then right at the end said, "Yeah, like this game just totally not for me." But my younger sister absolutely loved the game. It's like, so you're a 20-year-old male, like being asked to review Barbie Horse Riding, you slag it off, but then right at the end said, my younger sister liked it. Well, you wouldn't have ever bought bloody Barbie Horse Riding. She would have done. So it's like, we did what it said on the tin. So you make something for your audience, and you make sure that you, like, what you think they're getting is what they're getting. So Sherlock Holmes is like, you're going to solve a mystery. But it gets more difficult when you start to do other things. This picture here is from one of our other ones, which is called Embassy Party. You are effectively a spy going to a very posh party. And you just got to think, people know that sort of like James Bond, infiltrate in, work out who the dodgy people are. You actually find there's multiple dodgy people. So that's a sort of cliche idea that very quickly, without tons of backstory, you can just go, you're going to a posh party, you don't know anyone, you're a spy, go and work out who the drug dealer is, the gun runner, and things like that. And we think that's quite interesting, that you can play a game by talking to people at a party. So we've said that he's a spy, but in other games, it's quite difficult. And I've seen this in films now, and I realise, and maybe you as writers would see this in films, but they're often talking to other people so that the audience can work out what's going on. And it's very, very obvious sometimes where somebody walks into a scene and another person introduces them to someone else and says, so who's your friend? Oh, he's this, to the other person. So just so the audience know what's going on. And it just gives you that frame of reference. And you need to do that rather than, in a lot of the text adventures, you get a load of backstory stuff to read, and it's just like, it's very slow. Unfortunately, the mass market that we live in today is give me something fast, and if it's an interactive thing, I need to interact fast. I don't want passages as a dialogue of backstory and the characters and stuff. But you can do that quite easily in the fact that you want to make sure in the first minute or so there's a bit of interaction, a bit of a question, but make sure the question is only related to what they already know. You don't need to just think about what your plot points are of the questions you're going to ask, and then you can fill in all of the backstory and stuff and lace it into your story as you go. And don't try to just drown them with a whole load of information at the beginning, which I've seen done so many times. And setting the scene, yeah, the same sort of thing. What is the objective? It's like people like to know sometimes, sometimes in a film, you can sit down and put Netflix on, you know the genre, you know the actors, it looks pretty good production quality, I'll go there for the ride. And you do, and you'll get to the end. But in a game, you kind of like, well, I'm going to be asked to do stuff. Where am I going with this? And people sort of like to know. No, you could actually play with people and take them in a different direction to what they thought. So Sherlock Holmes, you assume you're going to solve the mystery, but you could have decided that you're going to play with the idea that they think that's what you're going to do, but take it in a different direction. But people need to know what they think they're expected to do. And with every question they're asked, they need to know those sort of things. So set out a very big goal. We did a Looney Tunes game, and I was having a meeting with one of the original writers for Looney Tunes, and he was talking about the fact that he wrote all the Tweety Pies, and he said, in 5 minutes, you've got to get like 10 gags in, and he said, and it was just very short, and he said, you just go on the cliche that cute little bird, vicious little cat will kill bird no matter what, cat will be very, very clever, but accidentally will always mess up. It is exactly the same formula for a Roadrunner and stuff. And it's like, yeah, so it is the same sort of thing with games, is set a big goal, lots of little goals, and play with each stage. So the multiple objectives. And here's an interesting thing that we learned from our puzzle games throughout the years, is throw in as many puzzles as you can think of. Now, we did that with the Dizzy games, and people who would get stuck. But then what you want to do is have puzzles that are just, well, they don't need to be solved, but if you do solve them, you'll feel particularly clever and get extra reward. Or either of these puzzles will achieve the same objective, so that you will end up always completing a game, but not necessarily having to know every single part. And I have to say, we noticed this in the original Mario games. It's like, there's a lot of puzzles that were coming into the Mario games, and you work out that actually for every clever puzzle, there's a simple puzzle around the outside that you'll notice. There's like a clever, fast way of completing something, or a slow, simple way of doing something. But it means that you can always progress. Otherwise, you'll just get stuck. And there is a fundamental problem that when you're playing story games, you kind of want to get to the end of the story. If you sat down to watch a film or read a book, and it was 50-50, whether at some point it would get turned off. Like when you were kids, your parents come in and go, you're not watching that, turn it off, you'll never see it again because it was live TV. It's just a doomer. It's like, oh, God. And it's the same with video games. It's like you sit down to play a video game, you kind of want to beat it. And now it doesn't matter if it's Call of Duty or Sniper Elite or something. It's their stories, but they're challenges. But if you're physically playing a proper story, you want to get to an end. Not the end, because it's interactive. You want to get to an end and make sure that your players get there. And that's actually one of my bugbears of interactive fiction is you're halfway through and it kills you. You're dead. But you could start again and do it again. And at this point, choose something different or get reset a long way. And it's like, that's just annoying, you know. We used to have that with Pac-Man and Space Invaders. It's like kill you, start again, do it all again. It's like, I don't want to do that. We don't live in that world anymore. Oop, another slide that won't move on. Okay, choice. So you are going to empower people with choice, and we do that with all sorts of, well, everything from those typing text adventures to video games with buttons. You are empowering the player to be involved, which is cool and what makes it so different from films and linear medium. So when it's conversation, you have to set it up correctly. So what you want to do, you don't want to ask a question which is just a yes or a no. It's like you want to feel like you're talking, oh my God, 5 minutes, oh crap, I'm going to have to go a bit quicker. Sorry, I said I needed a timer because I talk a bit. But you want to set it up like you're setting up a conversation. I saw an author write something of like, which way do you want to go? Do you want to walk north or east? And I was like, oh my God, would you ever say that to a real person? Should we go north or west or east? And it's like, should we go up towards the church or down over to that shop over there? Anyway, actually, voice recognition works much better in small sentences, which is something that people have not realized. It's like, so it feels rubbish to ask a question that's a yes or a no or a single word. It feels awkward for a player, and it's really difficult for voice recognition. Anyway, I'm going to jump through these. Meaningful choice, extremely right, I'm just going to go on to the next section because I've got to get to it, and I didn't realize I was... It's not, well, it is like me. Anyone knows that this is a subject I like. So voice input. We have put buttons on screens as well to get through because some people play on headphones and they don't want to talk. But generally speaking, we're trying to make a new system, drag and drop, for writers that can write full games with just conversation engine. And obviously we've done all the hard legwork of making a full engine that will use all this voice recognition, but obviously avoid people's names that are very similar or words that are very similar, because that would be crazy. But you can help voice recognition to give you a very smooth run. I'll show you another little trailer of a game, see some of the things we've been working on.
No, it's short notice. Have you been briefed?
I haven't been briefed yet.
No, of course not. Why wouldn't they just call you up here and not tell you anything? Here's the setup. A man calling himself the Raven has planted bombs all over the city of London.
Good evening, I'm Constable Harris.
I see it. What's that at the end?
It's a model tube train on a track. The track disappears into the side of the box.
I've just solved the train mystery puzzle. What's next?
I've just found a laptop leaning up against one of the roof's posts.
Oh no, we failed.
That explosion was really close.
Have I mentioned before how much I hate him? It's a... Thank you for coming in. I know...
Right, I'll go quickly past. Anyway, keep the player immersed. Because it's interactive stories often go back around themselves in loops and stuff, and what you want to do is not enter a room and get full descriptions of everything you could do or whatever, is give them a few options, and if they come back around in the room, then embellish things. Make sure that you're not describing a room if you're looking at a picture. Make sure you're not sort of saying, oh, it's a wet and windy night, stormy night and stuff like that, because you've got audio, you know. Make it atmospheric with audio and lighting and pictures. The writers write exactly like that because they're not looking at a picture, but they've got a picture in their mind, and they've got to write a description for the artist and the text as a script, and not text be written. And a script is very different from writing. And then we've made a system that makes things so that you can iterate very quickly. Our system looks like this. We have deliberately set out to make it just like a flowchart. It's drag and drop, and we've given a set of definite things. So you've got speak, where you give it a script, you choose an artificial character. It will speak with artificial voices. You can change the voices to real actors when you've got everything working. You've got choice, and you look for all of the key words that there might be in there. So it is AI in the fact that when someone talks, it converts it into text and then looks for the key words. So the author just looked for the key words and then goes on different branches depending on what keywords they said. And then we've got the ability to add audio on different tracks. Logic. No point in there's a difference between branching narrative and fully interactive. Branching narrative, make a choice, but you don't know what the choice is later. What you want to do is make a memory of that choice so that later you know what they did. So you're in a dungeon, you go and find a dragon comes and kills you, or you make a choice on a dragon, but if you'd have gone and got the sword and you were holding the sword and you get the dragon, you've got to have a different outcome because you now have a sword. So we've got some very simple logic in there, and it's literally like, what weapon are you holding or something you would set up. And that's a typical flowchart for a small game, and those are the sort of tiles of logic that you put into your flowchart. I'll give you a very, he's going to do another little trailer, and then I'll quickly run through if you probably want me to.
This was supposed to be a routine 26-month shipment mission. What the hell happened?
Co-pilot Ricky Zhang has sealed himself in the cockpit.
You walk through the narrow corridors of the Pegasus to the cockpit. The system room is deep in the bowels of the Pegasus.
I'll move on, but the graphics, you can import all of your own graphics, you can put them in multiple layers, you can composite green screen videos with GIFs, with visuals, to make interactive comics really, really easily. So that was one thing we did. Here was a little example of how you might set up a little scene. I'll go to the little video, and you'll get the idea that very simply, that little flowchart there is going to be a server in a coffee shop just asking you if you'd like a drink. And literally, I set this up in about an hour, and any of you should be able to just do this, which is perfect for a sort of a lecture or something. If you just wanted to show someone how to use AI and to make it so that you can have a conversation with an artificial character. So this was done in about an hour.
Hi, welcome to my cafe. What can I get you to drink? Can't decide? Can I tempt you with a tea or coffee?
Oh yes, a tea, please.
Excellent. I'll get you a nice cup of tea.
Oh, could I have a hot chocolate as well, please?
Sorry, we don't have that, but I can make you a lovely cup of tea or coffee.
Oh, could I have a latte then, please?
Good choice. We have an excellent new coffee bean roast.
Okay, thank you very much.
So the point of that is that I just sort of put in my flowchart in the previous thing, it probably, it asks a question, what would you like to drink? It sets up tea, coffee, but then says cappuccino, latte, and all the different things, and that's just, as far as she knows, it's just coffee. If you said any of those, it goes through coffee branch. It then also has the important point of having an anything. So you said something like, I wanted a milk, and she'll say, I'm sorry, we don't have that, but I can offer you tea and coffee. So it goes back around the loop and waits for tea or coffee. You could say nothing at all, and she says, sorry, I'm having trouble, choosing. She's trying to make it human. And so that little tiny flowchart just does that all in one, in simple drag and drop. So that's pretty much it. I probably went a little bit over. And I don't know if we have time for any questions. Did I go over that much? You don't have. Okay. Well, I hope you find that interesting. I won't play the last trailer. So thank you very much.